Okay, so for today's lesson, we're going to focus on the literary elements or the part of a story. The literary elements are what we've been learning since second grade, and that is what are the characters, setting, plot, and events of the story. In third grade, however, we're going to change our focus and figure out why those literary elements are important to the story. Today, we're going to focus on two of the elements, setting and characters. Clues in the text and illustrations can reveal a story's setting. When and where the story takes place is the setting. The story setting does influence the plot. It determines what can happen next in the story. When we talk about characters, we have major characters, or whoever the focus of the story is about, and then we have minor characters. The minor characters have a lesser role, but they help move that plot along. So today we're going to focus on those minor characters and the setting. Our objective then is that I can identify the setting of the text and notice how that impacted the plot. Or I can identify the minor characters and what they say or do and notice how that impacts the plot. I'll know I'm successful today when I can underline keywords that tell about the setting and then decide why the setting was important to the plot in that part of the text. Or I can underline words that a minor character says or does and that makes the major character react in the plot and decide how that reaction impacted the plot. It's important for me to notice the setting of the story and how the minor characters interact with the major characters. These noticings help me interact with the story and really understand the plot. So again, my success criteria is, as I read a section of the text, I'm either going to focus on the setting or the minor characters. If I notice the setting was most impactful here, I will underline the keywords that tell about the setting. I will decide why the setting was important to the plot in this part of the text. Or as I'm reading a part of the text, if I notice that a minor character was a major influence, then I will underline the words that that minor character says or does that affects the major character and makes them react in some sort of way, and then decide how that reaction impacted the plot. Sounds kind of complicated, but not really. So we're going to get started by rereading this section of the text. This is the part of the text where Amy was in the kitchen with her dad sharing her concerns. So as I read this, I'm going to decide, is it the setting that's really affecting this part of the story, or is it a minor character that's affecting this part of the story? So let me read. Madison has 2 months of practice more than me. I finished. She's been running faster than I ever run. Today I tried as hard as I could, and I ran slower than ever. Dad looked at me for a few seconds. He seemed to be thinking hard. Have you talked to Coach Joseph about any of this? He asked finally. Dad, I haven't talked to anyone about any of this, I said. Oh, honey, I don't know what to tell you, Dad said with a sigh. All you can do is your best. And you still have Friday's meet, right? I'm sure your slow run tonight was just being nervous. Plus, you're still getting back into shape. Yeah, I said. My dad didn't seem to understand how upset I was. I needed to talk to Natalie. My sister was always really good at solving problems. Dad, I asked. I need to talk to Natalie, I said. No offense or anything. I added quickly. I understand, Amy. I'll go get her for you, Dad said as he stood up. He even looked a little relieved. Soon, my sister walked into the kitchen. Okay, Amy, Natalie said, sitting down next to me. Dad told me everything, and I have an idea. She took a deep breath, and then she went on. Why don't you go back to the track in the park and talk to Madison? Maybe you can practice with her or something. That wasn't exactly what I had in mind. Are you kidding? I asked. No, I'm not. She's just a girl who likes to run, like you are, said Natalie. I sat for a few seconds to let that idea sink in. Will you come with me? So as I'm reading this part of the text, I'm trying to decide, is it really the fact that they're talking in the kitchen that influences this part of the story? Or is it Dad and Natalie, because Dad and Natalie are the minor characters in this part of the story. I feel like there was a lot of conversation between Dad and Amy, and then between Amy and Natalie. So I know she was talking and saying, that she was running slower than ever. Amy's the main character, and she's the focus of the story, and she's the one with the big problem. And in this part of the story, I don't think the kitchen really has anything to do with the problem. So I did notice, however, that Dad said, "Oh, honey, I don't know what to tell you." It also said, "My dad didn't seem to understand how upset I was." And then she asked her dad if she could speak to Natalie. And then Natalie came in and said, "Okay, Amy, Dad told me everything and I have an idea for you." And then she went on to tell her about her idea. So I really feel like Dad and Natalie were the most influential here, and really Natalie. So Dad and Natalie are the minor characters. Dad and Natalie are important to Amy, but the story's not about them. They're just helping her get through a situation. And Natalie suggests a solution to Amy's problem. If Amy follows Natalie's advice, then an event where Amy meets Madison will happen next. And so that's how the characters can influence the plot. Natalie has suggested that she meet Madison, and that sets our story up for the next big scene. Okay, so do we kind of get what's going on? Take a moment and think. What kind of thinking did Mrs. Williams have to do to be successful on this page? All right, let's look at another scene. This is the scene where Amy and her sister go to see Madison practice so that Amy could meet Madison and ask her questions. As soon as we reached the track, I saw Madison. She was sprinting through the last 100 meters of a lap. I started to turn around, but Natalie held on to my elbow and guided me toward the track. Madison stopped running as we walked up. She squinted at us through the fence. "Amy Reed? Is that you?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, surprised. "How do you know my name?" Madison laughed. "Because you're my biggest competition," she said. "What are you doing here?" "Well, I live near here," I told her. "This is my sister, Natalie." Natalie and Madison smiled at each other. I took a deep breath and went on. "So, anyway, I was running near the track last week and saw you practicing." I looked at my sister for help. "Amy had a rough meet last night. I suggested she come ask you for some advice," Natalie said. "I mean, I know you're on different teams and everything, but..." She stopped. Madison had started to blush. "Are you kidding?" asked Madison. "I should ask Amy for advice." I was shocked. "About what?" I asked. "Your form," Madison said. "Your form is always perfect." Then Natalie said, "If you two are going to practice, you should really get started." Madison and I went to the starting line. We decided to run the first lap in our own styles so that we could see the difference side by side. So now I have to ask myself, what helped the plot move along here? Was it Natalie, the sister, and Madison talking with Amy? Is that what helped her move along here? Or is it the fact that they went to the track? Well, as I read this, I noticed that the first sentence on this page was, "We went to the track." And then, so I know the setting is the track. I also noticed it says, "I live near here." And that's how she was able to see her practice. Well, because she lived near the track, then this affects the plot. It says, "Anyways, I was running near the track last week and saw you practicing." Because Amy lives near the track, she was able to see Madison practice last week, and that's why Amy started to worry in the first place. If you remember right in the very beginning, it said she was worried because she overheard the coach say that Madison had just run her best time, which is a 1:04. And that was kind of what started Amy worrying about everything. That also allows Amy to meet Madison, and they begin to work together. The fact that she lives near the track that Madison trains at provides that opportunity for them to meet. So in this part of the story, the setting is really the most important part. It allows the girls to see each other in their normal daily lives and kind of sets it up so they have to meet each other. Not have to, but sets it up so that they can meet each other. So the setting was most important here. Okay, I'm going to ask you to read this section of the text. I want you to decide, is it the setting or a minor character that most affects the plot on this page? Underline the clue words that helped you make your decision. And how did this affect the plot? You're going to do this page in Kami, and then we'll go over this page together. So make sure when you're reading in your books, you're paying attention to the words used to explain the setting and the words the minor characters use when talking to the major characters. These words are purposely chosen to move that plot along and make the story much more exciting.